Here's how to turn your Cayenne from this to this. But first, you'll need a few things to get started. First up, of course, you're going to need the Baja Designs XL Sport Lights. I got the driving combo pair. You can choose between the amber and white options. I chose the white option. They're about $392 on Amazon right now. I'll be drilling a hole in the fuse box, so I got this assorted grommet set to line the hole I'll be drilling. This quick tap kit is super important. I'll be connecting the trigger wire from the trigger 4 to this kit, and this is pretty much so the lights only draw power when the car is turned on. If you don't use this and connect directly to the battery, it'll constantly draw power and eventually kill your battery. This white connector is to combine both pairs of lights on one harness so that they turn on together. This is about $8 on Amazon. And last but not least, the trigger 4 wireless controller. And here's a list of everything else I used. I'll also have links to everything in the description below. Let's take a look at these lights. In this package are the brackets, the washers, and the bolts. Be careful with these because there's only just enough to get the job done. They don't supply extra. I get all these lined up on the bull bar. This takes a bit of time, but it's not too bad. Pretty easy job. You'll have to remove the bumper to get everything wired up and installed. There's plenty of YouTube videos online to show how to take the bumper off, so I didn't really include that. You'll need a 10mm socket to tighten the bolts onto the bull bar. I ran the wires through this little opening on the top right of the engine. There are 2 wiring harnesses that come with the Baja Designs lights. Each harness is about 6 feet long, so they're pretty long. If I had to do this over again, I'd probably cut them and just to get rid of that extra wire. Ran them just behind the winch. Then connected each pair of lights to a separate harness. You have to press these connectors pretty firmly together to get these to stick. Once they lock in, you're good though. Good to go. I finally got everything bolted together. All the lights are on. Now I'm just going to organize the wires. So I'm working on stretching all the wires out, getting any knots and loose ends straightened out. I'm going to use zip ties to tie the pairs of wires together for the pair on the right and the pair on the left. Just so they're a lot neater, so when I'm running the wires through the driver's side fender down along the side of the airbox, they're a lot cleaner and out of the way. Even though there's already a rubber protective sleeve on these wires, I went ahead and installed another sleeve, this plastic sleeve, to protect the wires further. So this is an off-road vehicle. I expect to get rocks and dirt and all kind of things getting shot up in here, so I'm just going to add this plastic wire protector as an extra layer of protection over what's already there. After I get these all neat and tidy, I have the trigger for Y connector that I'm going to use to connect the two sets of Baja lights to one terminal here. Just trying to size things up. I'm going to cut off these end pieces here, these connectors, so I can use the shrink wrap tubes, the heat shrink wrap tubes, to connect the Baja light positive and negative wires to the Y connector. So instead of having to connect everything separately, the two pairs of lights, I can connect all four lights on one connector. These are 12 gauge wires, so I'm just going to strip about an inch off each end. And spin these together, take the heat shrink wrap tube, and slide it over one end, and just use my heat gun to shrink the tube to join the two pieces together. I'm joining negative to negative, positive to positive, making sure everything's lined up. When I initially started using the heat gun, I started to burn some of this fabric, so make sure you're on a surface that doesn't start to burn or deteriorate when you use the heat gun. Once that's all done, I turn my attention to the negative terminal connection. So there's a rod sticking out of here on the driver's side chassis by the fender. So at the end of that rod is a bolt, a 17 millimeter bolt that you're going to have to remove. I found it easiest to remove the bolt using a ratchet that you can sort of rotate at the end of it, just to get the angle that you need to get the leverage to turn the bolt out. But it worked. Just be very careful removing the bolt, because if you drop that in there, you're not going to be able to get that back out of the fender. It's going to be a real pain. But it's not too bad. Just take your time, and you'll be able to remove the bolt. Once that's removed, you'll be able to add the negative wire from the trigger 4 there, and then add the bolt back on. It's not too bad. So here I'm reusing the positive and negative terminals from the Baja Designs wires, but later I found out that Trigger 4 actually has a package with the end terminals for their wires in the packaging. So this was a total unnecessary step. But anyway, I used the heat shrink tubes and connected those terminals to the Trigger 4 wires, the negative and positive terminals, before the install. The quick tap kit is super essential, super important for this project, because I don't want to install these lights connecting directly to the battery and have it just drain power from the battery over time. I'm going to use a 10 amp fuse here and connect that in the fuse box. That yellow trigger wire is going to connect to this red wire with a butt connector. So I'm just going to remove this panel. There's 3 plastic screws. Pop those off and you have access to the fuse box. There are about 3 more plastic screws you have to remove to pop open the fuse box. I'm just sizing everything up here to see exactly where I'm going to plug this in at. I'm going to take this 10 amp fuse out and then plug that into the wire tap at the top next to the new fuse, and then plug that back in. This wire is going to have to go through this firewall to connect to the trigger 4. So there's that fuse I'm going to have to take out. I had to use a drill, and you're going to drill a small hole by the 404 fuse in the left of the fuse box, and you're going to run the yellow trigger wire through that hole to get to the tap kit. So before I install the Eurowise mount in here, just going to let the trigger 4 sit in here while I connect all the wires together. First wire I'm going to connect is the yellow trigger wire. So I'm going to run that through the firewall. There's a plastic plug there that has access through there. So I'm going to run that through there and into the hole that I drilled in the fuse box by that 404 fuse. And connect that to the wire tap kit. Positive access to the positive terminal is under a red cap. Can't really see it here, couldn't get the right angle with the camera, but you can kind of see it right there. There's the red cap. Here's the negative wire, so I'm gonna put that where that negative bolt was that we worked on earlier. Gonna tighten the positive wire to the terminal. Trying to see if anything's turning on here. The wires are connected. Make sure that's on pretty tight. So the tap kit has instructions on how to put the fuse in, whether it's the accessory fuse or it's the fuse that was originally there for whatever it was turning on once you turn on the ignition. So I'm just trying to figure out which way it goes, but once you pull that out, you're gonna put it angled the exact same way that you took it out when you put in the tap kit fuse. So this has two fuses, the original fuse and the fuse that came in the kit. Once the fuse is in and connected, just gonna connect the trigger into the butt connector here with the red wire. Spinning it is useless, so I don't know why I was doing this. You can just take your wire cutters if it has a crimp tool and just crimp down onto the trigger wire and be done with it. Once that's done, you could fit the wires in there pretty neatly. and still be able to close the lid to the fuse box. It's going to look like this, or whichever way is more comfortable for you. But there's the hole that is running through the firewall. You can see it on the top left. That's where I ran the trigger wire through connection. There's a remote in here with some batteries to turn the trigger 4 on and off. There's the end terminals I was telling you about. That's what I could have used. Ugh. It's still gonna work though. Maybe in the future I'll replace them. So this comes with a few batteries, so I'm gonna pop these batteries in, and I'm gonna use these to wirelessly control the trigger 4 to turn the lights on and off. Nothing's gonna turn on until I turn on the ignition. So put the key in the ignition. There it is, the light turned on. Lights turning on. Everything's working fine. Perfect. Beautiful. No issues. Thank God. So now I'm going to install mount for the trigger 4. Wasn't sure at first how to exactly put this in here, but that bolt down there, you're going to use that to mount it. So I have a 17mm socket. Wasn't too tough to get that out of there, to loosen it up. Which way does this go? I'm gonna take this protective film off. I'm trying to figure out how this works. These bolts are sort of a pain to put in, but once you get them in and you're careful, it works out just fine. I literally took this thing apart 2 or 3 times to figure out which way I wanted this to face. I live in the desert, so I didn't want all the plastic bits to face the engine. So I face it away from the engine when I'm going to mount it in here. But I want the wires to face towards the front of the car. So I had to kind of figure out which configuration I wanted. I eventually figured it out. Once I figured it out, I tightened the bolt down in there. next to the engine, above the suspension, tightened it, and it's going to fit right there perfectly under this plastic cover. So now I'm just going to organize all these wires, get them out of the way, run them along the right side, well, the left side of the fender. There's a gap there, so I'm just going to tuck all the wires up under there. Plastic cover fits perfectly over it. You're just gonna have to kind of mess with it a bit, but it fits right under the rubber piece, the rubber liner. So you just gotta tuck that under there, but with effort it'll fit. Tightened all the screws, made sure everything fit. Perfect, everything looks good. And voila, lights work, bumper's back on, wires are tucked, wires look good. Took it out, turned the lights on, no issues. Car looks fantastic, everything works. Hope this helped, and thanks for watching. Bye.